return to the Commonwealth. We've travelled a long way to get here, and with good reason. The nations of the Commonwealth are increasingly important to the UK. 56 countries drawn from every continent, a third of humanity, all united by shared values and shared interests. It is completely unique. But I think that we can do more to seize its potential, to put the Commonwealth in the service of its people, to ensure it delivers where it matters. And in an unstable world, with authoritarian states challenging the rule of law, it is vital we show the power of democracies working together to solve the problems before us. Now, this summit was the first for His Majesty the King as head of the Commonwealth, and so we used this moment to open a new chapter for this organisation. We selected a new Secretary-General this afternoon in the highly respected Shirley Botchwell, and I want to pay tribute to her campaign, which has brought the whole Commonwealth together. Now I look forward to working with her to set a new, ambitious and more focused agenda. My message is that the UK is back, reconnecting, open for business, working in partnership with others to solve shared challenges. And together we must harness the power of the Commonwealth to truly make it count. The key test here is growth. The Commonwealth represents a market for British business set to be worth nearly $20 trillion by 2027, including 6 of the 10 fastest growing economies in the world, with Guyana topping that list. And because of our deep ties, trade costs are lower between Commonwealth economies and investment flows are higher. We must do more to maximise that advantage. So we agreed a plan here in Samoa to boost investment across the Commonwealth. I announced today the new UK Centre for Trade Expertise to turbocharge trade and growth in developing countries, which will, in the end, benefit all of us. And after my bilateral meetings here with leaders and business people, we've also delivered £1 billion worth of new investment into the UK, a vote of confidence in the economic stability my government brings. We marked Australia's ratification of our accession to the CPTPP and created a new Pacific Business Club, helping British companies to bid for $6 billion of multilateral development bank contracts, and strengthened our ties with this region that is powering global growth. All of this comes just after our International Investment Summit, which brought in over £60 billion to the UK. We're working around the clock to build the international partnerships that we need to create tens of thousands of good jobs and drive growth into every part of the United Kingdom. We also want to see the Commonwealth put a renewed focus on climate change. As the first serving Prime Minister to visit a Pacific Island country, it is humbling to see the impact of the climate crisis here and to hear the fears of the people of Samoa. It underlines the need to act, and that's why we restored UK climate leadership, acting at home to transform our energy sector, and acting internationally, providing new support to help island communities like this. Action to preserve nature, save coral reefs, and cut plastic pollution, and calling for more ambition at COP in just a few weeks' time. The Commonwealth has a powerful voice on these issues, and we must use it. Finally, I've had constructive bilateral discussions here on security. This region sits on a geopolitical fault line. It is the crossroads for global trade, so our prosperity and security at home depend on stability here. And that's why we're so committed to our AUKUS partnership. It's why our carrier strike group will be in the region next year. And it's why, despite the fact that we've flown halfway around the world, the Royal Navy was already here in Samoa, waiting to greet us. I called the crew of HMS Tamar yesterday to let them know how proud we are of them. And I announced that we'll be doing more in the Pacific Island nations to reinforce maritime security. It shows once again our commitment to the region, to supporting free and open Indo-Pacific, upholding our values and bringing new opportunities home to the United Kingdom. Now I'll take some questions, starting, I think, Chris, with you at the BBC.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Chris Mason at BBC News. Do you consider Israel's airstrikes to be proportionate? And if I may, you call yourself a pro-business party, so what do you say to businesses this weekend anticipating being clobbered for more tax? Thank you.
On the question of the strikes, I think we need to be really clear that Israel does have the right to defend itself. But we are urging and have been urging all sides to show restraint, and that's why I'm very clear today Iran should not be responding to this. Those are really important messages of de-escalation that at this moment in time I think it's very important everybody needs to heed. In relation to the budget, obviously I'm not going to get drawn on the budget which will be laid out on Wednesday of this week. I think I'm going now to Beth, Sky.
Prime Minister, oh, blimey, that's loud, sorry. Prime Minister, there has been somewhat of a backlash back in the UK after you told me that people who also make an income from property or shares do not fit into your definition of working people. Are you, as some of your critics argue, plotting a war against Middle Britain?
No. Let me be clear about that. What we're doing is two things in the budget. The first is fixing the foundations, which is dealing with the inheritance that we've got, including the £22 billion black hole. We have to deal with that. In the past, for the last 14 years, leaders have walked past those problems, created fictions, and I'm not prepared to do that. We're going to fix the foundations. And having fixed the foundations, we're going to rebuild our country, and that is a very clear plan to ensure that people are better off, their living standards go up wherever they live across the United Kingdom, to make sure that our NHS is not just back on its feet, but fit for the future, and to ensure that we've got the public services that the public are entitled to and deserve. And that's my focus. That's why I came into politics, and that is the mission of this government. Thank you. Romilly at ITV.
Prime Minister, you came here saying reparations would not be on the agenda. It seems they have made their way into the final communique. Did you lose the battle, and have you damaged relations with Commonwealth countries with your attempt at a hard line on this?
Well, let me first be clear that the slave trade, slave practice was abhorrent, and it's very important that we start from there. Abhorrent is the right word. We've actually had a very positive 2 days here in Samoa. There has been a communique out today, which is positive. It talks about the shared challenges that we have. The dominant theme of the 2 days has been resilience and climate. And today at the retreat, which was a retreat going on for 6 or now 8 hours, I think, in the end, the theme for the day was chosen by the Prime Minister here in Samoa. And she chose resilience and climate. So I think that gives you a clear sense of the absolute priority here. And that's not surprising. You've spent some time here. You'll have seen just how vulnerable this island and similar islands are to climate change. It is of paramount importance. There is, as you rightly say, a paragraph in the communique about reparatory justice, which does two things. It notes calls for discussion, and it agrees that this is the time for conversation. But I should be really clear here. In the 2 days we've been here, none of the discussions have been about money. Our position is very, very clear in relation to that. And obviously this is quite a long communique. It's one paragraph, I think, in 20-something paragraphs, noting the call for discussion, agreeing a time for conversations, and that's all that's in the communique. Obviously, I mean, the next opportunity to look at this. There's a UK Caribbean forum next year, which is a Foreign Secretary level meeting, and which then report to leaders. Thank you. Lizzie from the Daily Mirror.
Thank you, Lizzie Buchan, Daily Mirror. Prime Minister, you've been calling for restraint in the Middle East for some time, but are you concerned that Israel's no longer listening? And are Israel and Iran on course for an all-out war?
Look, I mean, the most important thing here is de-escalation. And yes, we've been calling for that for some time. As you know, I made a call myself to the President of Iran and have repeatedly had discussions with others in the region, including, of course, the Prime Minister of Israel. And we must continue to do so. That's what diplomacy is. It takes time, but it is important that we continue to do so, because the single most important thing now is de-escalation across the region. Thank you. Nick from the Daily Telegraph.
Thank you. In your opening remarks, you said the Commonwealth should demonstrate the power of democracies working against authoritarian states. More than 40 Commonwealth nations are part of the Belt and Road Initiative, and the new Secretary-General said last month that when it comes to containing China's economic influence, the Commonwealth shouldn't be poking its nose where it's not needed. Is she right? Or should the Commonwealth become more geopolitical, and should Britain be encouraging other members to reduce their reliance on China?
Well, look, I mean, thank you for that question, because I think it goes centrally to one of the issues we're discussing here, which is the Commonwealth obviously has a strong shared history, but the question is, what is the focus as we go forward? And I've been really clear in the discussions I've had in the last few days, and there's been a lot of discussion about this, that the focus ought to be on our values and democracy and the rule of law, because they are threatened by authoritarian regimes, and you're quite right to point to the fact that China is increasingly trying to be influential across Commonwealth countries, and we need to be clear about our values of democracy and the rule of law. But also, I've been making the case that the priority ought to be trade and investment and unlocking finance for Commonwealth countries in order for them to build up the resilience they need. This is finance from international institutions is the issue that's come up time and again in the last 2 days, and how they access that finance to take some of the measures of resilience that they need to take. Again, something that's very pressing in islands like this, because they are worried about the rising sea levels, and therefore what are the practical measures that they need to take now in order to guard against that. But also being clear that we have a shared interest in trade as well as we go forward. So that's the way I look at it. But I do think with that renewed focus, we should remind ourselves of our values, the rule of law and democracy, and use that as the sort of energy, if you like, to go forward into the future with the Commonwealth. Ryan at the Sun. Right.
Prime Minister, you said there's tough decisions to come at the budget. Some working people are now fearing taxes are going up, businesses expecting a hit. Can you offer any light at the end of the tunnel for the public fearing next week's budget?
Yes, and that is that we are fixing the foundations, which is tough, but we're doing it for a purpose. And that is because I believe very strongly that if we fix the foundations, take the tough decisions, scrub it down, and make sure that our economy is on a very stable footing, that's what it will do, that is the best platform for rebuilding the country. And I am heartened by the fact that at our investment summit, £63 billion worth of money, investment into Britain was pledged, put down. There's been other sums since then, but that is only happening because they see a government that's serious about economic stability and serious about long-term decisions. So yes, we've got to fix the foundations, take those tough decisions, but the purpose of that is to build that better Britain and make sure that on those foundations we do build that country. And for me, that's the characteristics of that, and what I want to be judged on is, one, have we made people better off? Do they feel better off under a Labour government because we fixed the foundations. And secondly, that we genuinely pick the NHS up, put it back on its feet, but also at the same time reimagine it and make it fit for the future. That is as much about reform and technology as it is about money. You can't invest, there's no investment without reform as far as I'm concerned. But it is also about fixing our public services and building the Britain that people are entitled to and deserve. Thank you. Jim.
Jim Pickard, Financial Times. Prime Minister, in the run-up to the election in July, your campaign was honest about 3 niche tax rises on private equity and private schools and on the oil and gas industry, but you gave the public no inkling at all that there would be tens of billions of pounds of tax rises happening in the budget next Wednesday. In your manifesto, did you mislead the public?
No, we were very clear about the tax rises that we would necessarily have to make, whatever the circumstances, and you've listed them there, and I listed them I don't know how many times in the campaign. We were equally clear in the manifesto about, and in the campaign, that we wouldn't be increasing taxes on working people, and spelt out what we meant by that in terms of income tax, in terms of NICs, and in terms of VAT, and we intend to keep to the promises that we made in our manifesto. Thank you all very much. As I say, again, apologies that it's been so late. I can assure you, for those that are interested, the delay was not on the paragraph 22 on reparations. That was actually knocked down hours ago. It was on a completely different paragraph, and I'll brief you on the plane what that was. It took some time. Thanks very much.